back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, we are back. It is game week, ladies and gentlemen. The final unofficial 40 pod before we see a Oklahoma football team under the direction of Brent Venables take the field on Owen Field Saturday. So looking forward to it. We've had media. It is over for the week. And we talked to players on Monday and Tuesday. Before we get to that, though, Eddie is still with us. He did not die last week at practice.
We talked about it a little bit on Friday.
Right.
During the emergency
pod.
I forgot we did an emergency pod Friday, yeah.
Stronger than ever. I'm going to the doctor today, so maybe I won't be stronger than ever. But
not. It was previously scheduled. It's not
I've survived 2 media availability since then, so we're good.
Oh, did you have a stroke there? Your speech is a little slurred.
I think I actually might have.
Honestly, that passes the test. That sounds Eddie. That
I'm
was very
back.
Eddie. So
I'm
perfect.
back.
Yeah,
I'm back.
Availability is a difficult word. So yeah, Eddie. I mean, we were in a sweat lodge last night inside the indoor, and you survived that. I think part of the problem
was Monday
is
night.
Monday night.
It was sweatier last night.
Yes, it was.
Last night was when we
Very
were
hot.
dripping wet.
Dripping everywhere yesterday.
Tuesday, and it was like cloudy, kind of overcast. It wasn't too bad, but it was just humid AF.
Yeah, I literally like water was coming down my back from my hair. I mean, it was just crazy.
And these son of a bitch meteorologists, they told us 82, 85 last week, and then it's steadily gone up each day. And then they even ended last night's weather forecast with, and we might not be out of triple digits. I was told 2 weeks ago. I was told 2 weeks ago that triple digits were not going to happen in the state of Oklahoma anymore. But here we are entering the first week of September, and it's going to be hot on Saturday. So just prepare accordingly.
And our air conditioner is struggling in the studio, so it's definitely. I mean, it's like when it gets to 90-ish. I mean, it's shit. It's because like when you're on a football field, you'd think like, oh, you're on grass. It doesn't get any any cooler. Yeah, it gets hotter to me.
Yep.
So we did have a chance. We've heard Brent Venables. God, it's Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we heard him yesterday. The coordinators on Monday. We talked to. I do kind of like how we've just been getting. Offense, defense doesn't matter.
Like a smorgasbord of people.
I don't know how Bob's giving me a look like. Bob and I have both failed technology this week, or technology has failed us. Although Bob had a good save because he had a backup.
A hell of a save. It was a hell of a save.
Saved all of his interviews from yesterday, so that was fantastic.
And the audio was great. You won't even be able to tell if you're watching the videos at home.
An alternate audio
source.
It's not in Spanish. It's in English.
That'd be cool though.
But no, I mean, I don't know. I always like to throw it to Bob first because he's writing all the stories. But your standout after, your number one storyline heading into Saturday.
If it's not Brent Venables,
outside of the obvious,
right? Because
like your sub.
Brent Venables' first game as head coach.
Half the questions yesterday were focused on it, and I don't disagree with it. It's Jaden Davis being the starting cornerback. All of a sudden, in his 4th year, it's coming together. I just dismissed it. When people were saying it, I was like, okay, Jaden Davis won't be an afterthought, but that doesn't mean he's going to be any good or that he's going to be the starter. And it's clear that he's earned it. You heard it from Ted Roof and Brent Venables. Like, he's been consistent. They both used that word. And as much as I thought DJ Graham would be a lock, especially with his connection to Jay Valai from years and years and years, there's obviously something different about Jaden compared to who he was the last 2 seasons.
It's kind of like one of those things. It's predicted outcomes, kind of like Jeff Levy was talking about. You know what you're going to get. They feel confident that they know what they're going to get with the 22 that they initially throw out there. And he was talking about predicted outcomes with Davis Bevel, but it's kind of the same thing, is it not?
Well, here's the thing, and I know there's a certain segment of the fans that are like, Brent, you're going to find out this guy's not any good. Like,
correct.
It's like, we've seen this. Like, I know you think you know what you're doing, but you really don't know what you're in for. This guy's not any good.
But you haven't watched him on ABC before.
But I mean, this has been the bane of the existence of the OU defense. Is that go back to Jordan Thomas? It's like you have a cornerback that comes in, plays really well young, loses some confidence and just falls apart, and he's no good to anybody from that point forward. And we've seen that happen time and time again. I mean, I think probably the one guy that escaped that. I mean, even I'm just trying to think.
Motley is the only guy that
Parnell Motley kind of escaped that, but why can't I think of the other Trey's name now? Not Norwood.
Brown?
Trey Brown. Like, he kind of avoided that, but he also, the shine kind of came off of Trey Brown a little bit as his career went on. Nothing as bad as like Jordan Thomas, and nothing as bad as like Julian Wilson.
I was talking to Eric Bailey and Guerin about this yesterday. It's like everybody that we've quote unquote kind of shit on over the last couple years in this defense, all of a sudden you look up and it's like Trey Brown was playing well for the Seahawks when he was healthy. Trey Norwood ends up finding a spot, and we didn't think he was even going to be
really well
drafted, and then he ends up, starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers at one point. It's like, I think almost in a way we're in, and rightfully so because of the performances on the field, but it's almost kind of skewed because you look at the overall product as far as what they were when they were here. Is it wrong to say that? Like Eric Bailey's question yesterday, I thought it was a great question, and it made me kind of pause. You go, who has been that guy over the last decade in the Oklahoma defense that you really expected to be a big player at the next level? There's guys that
Kenneth
have kind
Murray
of made
is
homes.
about the only one you could point.
And that's who we were talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking about Kenneth and like how good he could end up being for the Chargers. But there's been nobody over the last couple of years that you just go, that guy is going to be a starter in the NFL. We were talking about Malcolm Rodriguez, and it led to Kenneth Murray. Just as far as like guys that you feel confident could be next level players. And Kerry, it kind of loosely to tie it back to this team, you tweeted it last night. It's like after talking to David Awegbu, a.k.a. Justin Harrington, which we'll get into in a second, or Danny Stutzman. Leave me on the island.
That's right. Don't want the text messages, all right?
We've talked to both of those guys, and all of a sudden you go, man, there's just a sense of confidence right now within the defensive side of the football that you go, that just hasn't been there in a while. And maybe it's like a little bit of hope and a little bit of just sheer belief that they've been coached well. You're going to get a good product on Saturday.
And see, to me, it goes back to when you took the trip out to see Danny Stutzman. And, whether it was kind of the rankings discussion or where he fit in nationally, but I mean, you've been telling us forever that this guy is different. Like, this guy is the linebacker that's going to prove whether this staff, whatever staff was going to be, has that development potential. And I think we still are asking that question. Like, is Danny Stutzman a star? Like, we're going to find that out. David Agwebu, I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Tons of potential. Talking to him the other night, it was like, I kind of believe that he's a linebacker now, and like he gets it, and he can act. Like, if you're going to tell me that Deshaun White is being moved out by those two guys, I'm all ears. Like, let me see what it looks like.
Has there been a guy that, and this is a question for all three of you guys, just as far as somebody that has elevated his stock as a football player without us actually seeing something more than a David Awegbu? It seems like this guy is like
he lost the weight.
Different.
He got the captaincy for this week. Yes,
he's being confused for defensive backs.
See, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna do it. It's just almost like this is almost like a completely new player to the program, almost in a way.
He's so invested.
Very much so. And just the way that he talked last night, with us, Kerry, just as far as, it was very much a come to Jesus moment whenever Brent Venables came in and into the spring, and he's talked about it, looking in the mirror and realizing that he kind of needed to wake up or he was going to end up, and for a bad comparison maybe, but like almost R.J. Washington this thing, and that it's like, shit, my time's running out on this thing. I have to start waking up.
People are running to their computers. Who is R.J. Washington?
Fossil
you have to be like in your 30s to know who R.J. Washington is.
Exactly.
Am I dating myself?
You don't want to fall in. You don't want to fall into that path.
It does feel like though that this thing is completely new. Who knows? We're at the point. I was telling Bob this morning. It's like we're at the point now where you go to post practice on Monday and Tuesday this week, and it's like you just kind of look at the players. And it's like, what can we ask you that we haven't really necessarily talked about that can't be not proven on Saturday. You know what I mean?
It's basically asking.
It's basically a moment of, hey, we know that you guys expect to be pretty good, but I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, majority of the questions this week just asking older guys about the younger guys.
Yeah,
that's where we've reached.
Yeah, and like I think that R. Mason Thomas is certainly somebody that has impressed himself upon guys that have been around the program for a while, whether you talk to an Anton Harrison or you talk to a Reggie Grimes. Like, just the conversation that we had with Reggie Grimes on Monday night, it's like,
oh, man, what a
this
sharp
guy
dude.
is awesome.
He is totally awesome. Like,
I say that about a bunch of those guys.
But Reggie Grimes, like, you
talk
to him, and it makes you think of, like, talking to, like, Reggie White. Like he just is so – he's such a – like, I don't know really how to explain it.
Very philosophical?
No, more like just he's just a dude. Like, like he seems like he gets it, and almost like he gets it more than a lot of people, my age. Like, he's figured it out, and he really, like, just him talking about Brent Venables and how he always wanted to play for him, and knew what to expect, and
all these guys just seem so confident. Like, I don't know if that's like...
Yeah. That's the thing with Reggie. He said, I've always been intelligent. I felt when I got here, I was like the smartest defensive lineman on campus. But I needed the confidence to go with it. Yeah. Now I've got it.
The funny thing about after we talked to Reggie, it was like all the media members were going up to him, and it was this wasn't what was being said, but it was, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Like, we really appreciate it.
Awesome.
We really enjoyed that. Like, that was kind of the feeling. It was it was cool.
It's like every one of these guys had like this toolbox that the other coaching staff just didn't have a key to open.
Yeah.
And somehow, some way, this new coaching staff, and, again, they haven't played a single down. So who knows what this thing's going to look like. But you just get this sense, like, their confidence gives you confidence after talking to them. It's kind of like talking to Brent. It's like, I want to run through a brick wall right now.
You know what it is? Like, if you drop someone on this planet for the first time and they had, like, all the knowledge to be a sports reporter, and they came into this camp and they talked to the defensive players and the offensive players, they wouldn't come away saying, oh, I have real concerns about the offense. They'd come away saying, man, this defense must have been really good for a very long time. Like, because they act like a defense that is a traditional powerhouse.
Yeah.
That's weird.
They
when we all know the defense has been the biggest problem in this program for a decade.
They act like a team that is returning a top 5 defense.
Yeah. They carry themselves
and
that way.
And maybe, the simplicity of it might just be like the bottom line of, that's a good thing that they believe that.
How much of that is just the players being like, shit, we're actually being coached now. Like, like we actually are. They're teaching us how to play defense for real. Like, we've never been through this before.
I mean, you're hearing it with Todd Bates all the time. You're hearing it with Jay Valai constantly. It is. It just feels like a different brand of coaching that's really shining through.
And then it's kind of interesting on, like, the flip side of that. You have an offense that, and I thought Marvin Mims, like, it's one of those things, like, am I just trying to read into too much of what he said last night? But I do get a sense that, like, he dropped the line about Jeff Levy being, he wanted to say the best offense coordinator in the country, and then he goes, arguably the best. Like, he caught himself knowing that everybody was going to run with it. But I think the transition of power between Lincoln Riley to Jeff Levy, just from an offensive calling standpoint that we talked about last week, is kind of exciting. And then you look at, like, the depth chart that's thrown out there. There are so many wide receivers, like 9 or 10 guys that you go, I could make it. Like, how many of those guys are actually going to be guys when you get into, I'll even give them to October, middle October. How many of those wide receivers are actually going to be the guys that you expect on a 3rd and 9 can go get a football?
Well, I was kind of probing with Marvin last night on some of that stuff, just about, like, the deep ball and stuff like that. But, like, look, the offensive guys that are here, for the most part, like, that thought about leaving, like Theo Weiss and Marvin Mims, like, we all know Marvin Mims was frustrated. His dad was frustrated. His trainer was frustrated. Like, everyone around him was frustrated. So you knew that they had to be speaking for him a little bit. But, like, I just think Marvin Mims was kind of fed up with Lincoln Riley's offense and how he was used in it. And he's happy to see. And no one actually will say it, but I think even those receivers we kind of have a running game now that we're committed to, so we're going to be able to get behind defenses now.
Yeah, and if they play to 89 and 90 snaps, they're going to get 20, 30 more plays now with a lot more chances.
That's what I was going to say earlier when Marvin caught himself. I've got to think even Lincoln Riley could be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like from Marvin, like, yeah, you had every reason to be pissed and kind of hate me. Like, and anybody that he might be like, well, that's unfair. Marvin, he's got to, like, even Lincoln and his, whatever, his opinions of himself or how things went in Norman, like, he's got to realize Marvin Mims has a fair beef.
And I think part of that beef, and I don't want to get, we always get
That's
into
not
this.
fair. Yeah, I mean, he has reason to have one.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, it wasn't just Lincoln. I think it was Lincoln and Dennis Simmons because they were like a power duo. Like, for like his trainer to come out and say things, all that stuff seemed to be a direct shot at Dennis Simmons. So I think that's the frustration was as much with both of them as it was just with Lincoln.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is, like, offensively, they say all the right things, but we all know that Jeff Lebby is a very good coordinator. At the same time, everyone wants to see it. Like, they want to see what the offense looks like. They want to see, like, if Dylan Gabriel goes out there and starts throwing, 60-yard bombs, and has, you see a bunch of explosive plays, everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, we're used to this. This is an OU offense.
You know what is going to be
sign me off.
You know what is going to be different that somebody was talking about after the press conference yesterday that I really hadn't even thought about was OU having an offense coordinator back up in the box. They're going to be using the telephones on the sidelines again. But at the same time, I think that just having, and Marvin talked about this a little bit, it was at the very end of his interview session, just as far as having Dylan Gabriel down on the sidelines with him, he's kind of like the player coach, like because him and Jeff Lebby understand each other because they understand the offense so well. That's another one of those, like, if you're a praying person, pray for the health and safety of Dylan Gabriel even more so, just because he's down there and he's able to communicate what Jeff Lebby's going to be telling him from up in the box.
Well, and that's what I've wondered. Like, who's going to be the coach who on the sideline is relaying and, presenting the message of whatever Jeff Lebby, obviously he's talking to Dylan Gabriel too, so I get that. But, like, hey, I'm seeing this from up here. This is is it Bill Bedenbaugh? Is it Joe John Finley?
I think.
Like, I wonder how that gets transmitted.
I think the two guys that are going to be like the quote unquote signal callers on the sidelines will be Joe John and Tanner Schaefer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Joe John is really Jeff's right-hand man.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, people have asked, like, who, if Lebby did great and, suddenly got a job. Like, I think he would be much more in contention than people realize.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
the next OC.
Talked about it on the pod this past year that didn't he interview for the Tech offense coordinator job, Joe John?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been told, look, if Lebby leaves here, he's leaving to be a head coach. He'll take Joe John with him to be his offensive coordinator.
Sure.
Which, from everything you hear, I wouldn't put it past, like, Brent to make DeMarco Murray his offensive coordinator.
No, and DeMarco will be part of that mix as well.
Yeah.
I should have said him with Tanner and Joe John. Bill usually stands on, like, the opposite end of the...
Yes, he's far away from everything.
watching the backside of the offensive line.
He's an O-line coach, man. Trust me, as the guy, and Eddie, this pain. Like, as you shoot high school games, like, or for you, like, you've got, all right, this is my O-line coach. I got to watch him because he's going to move right into my shot any minute now.
Yeah.
So that is a invariable reality. Guys, one of the things I thought was really interesting that I don't know that many people have talked about on the depth chart, and it's true on both sides of the ball with two kind of interesting exceptions. There's no guys listed at multiple positions save for two. On the offense, there's none. Like, no guard is listed at both guard sides, no tackle, there's no mention of that. Now, I think when, I talked about it in kind of some of the thoughts I put up on the depth chart. Like, I think when the rubber meets the road, it may look a little different than that. But that's kind of interesting because for years we're used to, I don't know, Bray Walker was the backup at both right guard and left guard or whatever it may be. The only two exceptions are R. Mason Thomas and Grayson Halton. They're both listed at multiple positions. That's the only guys I see on the offense and defensive depth chart. And that's kind of wild to me.
By the way, I think somebody just stopped. Somebody just came in. You go.
I'll get it.
Oh, sorry. I tell you what, I think we got a package being delivered. Problem with the pod. By the way, I'll take a time out here. Josh, let me ask you a question. Has the lemon and cracked pepper shrimp experiment taken place with Tiffany?
It has not, but again, this is not a lack of enthusiasm. So we arrived a week ago tonight back from our anniversary trip. We have literally spent one night together in each other's presence since that night, because I had 3 straight nights of football games. Then she immediately had a bunch of work meetings. It's been a little chaotic. I had 3 different appointments for my girls yesterday. Life has been chaos as we head into August. And then, of course, I don't know that we have to get into it because we did the emergency pod, but the Friday change of plans that I thought my work weekend was going to start on, Sunday, but instead I pretty much worked through the weekend to go see Anthony Evans and hung out in the Alamo Dome to do that interview. But yes, it will absolutely happen. I will relive it. I am looking forward to it. And buy all the Prime Shrimp, people. Buy all of it.
Primeshrimp.com. That's PRIME shrimp.com. I just entered a spelling bee all of a sudden. You can choose from all their different varieties: French Quarter, Alfredo, garlic, or butter. Louisiana shrimp boil, their signature sauce, and now lemon and cracked pepper. No mess, no fuss. When you do get around to I'm sure, Josh, you will volunteer to make it because it's so easy. And plus that says, you kind of get to give the wife a night off from being in the kitchen. Boy, that doesn't sound weird, does it? You can tell Bob does all the cooking, the way he's laughing.
I do a lot of cooking. Yes,
I do a fair amount for I actually cooked 2 meals yesterday, so yeah, I'm with that. Yeah.
There we go.
So anyway,
unlike that response,
beautiful promo.
Prime Shrimp is not
Prime
messy.
Shrimp's going to be super excited about this ad.
Yes. Go check them out. Primeshrimp.com. Use that promo code SoonerScoop, and you'll get $20 off your first order. That's primeshrimp.com, PRIME shrimp.com. Go check them out. So one thing that we haven't broached is suspensions. And we did post on the board someone, which, happens from time to time, posted a OCSN docket with a forcible removal, I guess you would say.
Man, I'd be so pissed. That sounds so much worse than it really is.
Forcible eviction, I guess.
Eviction. Get out of here.
For Wanye Morris. From what we're told, he's not playing in the first game. Probably not going to play in the second game. Has nothing to do with that, though. I'm sure that doesn't make the coaches happy. I mean, you got to pay your rent. And does that... I mean, altogether, it makes it look like, okay, life is spiraling out of control for Wanye Morris. Is it? I don't know. But, I mean, guys obviously got to get his stuff together. But we were always kind of led to believe this is more of an academic situation, the suspension part of it. So, Eddie, I know you'd heard kind of the lineup changes.
Yeah,
I
think if that's going to happen and Wanye doesn't play, I would imagine that Anton Harrison flips over to left tackle, and then you get Tyler Guyton, who's somebody that
or does Anton go right?
Yeah, that's what Eddie meant.
What did I say? Anton would go from left to right.
Yeah.
Guyton would play left.
And then So we'll see. I mean, I think that's probably not the most comfortable situation, but
UTEP Kent State, you can
get through that, and not only can you get through it, but I think that's a situation that they've gone out of their way to talk about how good Tyler Guyton's been. And I feel like that's not a coincidence with them probably having known this was coming.
Wanye gonna Cortez Johnson himself here?
That's you read my mind, Bob. Like, this may have been the worst thing you've ever done. Like, this is
Jalen Saunders around to take the fall.
Because I let the Zach Sanchez, and then he never gave it up.
Right.
The buzz on Guyton is large.
And he's a large man, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, you can't even try and make sense of how Dylan Gabriel throws over that offensive line. But it just works. I mean, we've seen Drew Brees. I mean, he's done it in the NFL. They just make it work. But
Do you think like they're like excellent at trigonometry or something? Like they're just good at like the angles. They understand like, okay, I've got to get this much lift.
I mean, like when you watch Drew Brees, and it's got to be the same thing with Kyler Murray. It's like
sure.
they see windows that most people just aren't capable of seeing. Like they're seeing.
They've had to.
Yeah, they've grown up, so it might be second nature to them, and we just haven't grown up doing that. Like it's not a part of our thinking or thought processes. So, but I mean, I'm sure Dylan Gabriel had 6'4" guys at UCF they had to throw over. Anyway, but no, I mean, I think. One of the things that I think is going to be interesting about this weekend is I wouldn't even call it a makeshift offensive line, but seeing Matauer, seeing Murray. I mean, I'm looking to see if Murray cuts.
What a bright dude McCade Matauer is.
See, I didn't get to. You guys talked to him. I didn't get to talk to him.
Is awesome. He's going to be a great talker all year.
Well, if you went to Cal, you're probably pretty smart.
Very, very bright. Comes from like that football family too. He talked about his uncle playing for the Bears for 8 or 9 years. Dad played at A&M. His brother's obviously a really talented football player at the Woodlands right now. I think it kind of went under the radar. I think he said that this will be his 29th consecutive start in D1 football. He started 28 at Cal the last 2 years, 14 and 14, and then obviously coming up on Saturday. But like that entire offensive line is guys outside of maybe Guyton. If you were going to say Morris, those are all guys that have played a ton of football. They just haven't played together, but as Matauer reminded me, it's like they've played with each other now for almost 8 months.
But, I mean, that trio, Matauer, Andrew Rame, Chris Murray, first off, will Chris Murray get fewer penalties this year? Like, he's going to be more disciplined. But how do they do in the run game? Like, that is... Sure. One of the things I'll really be watching, like my binoculars will be focused on that center position until I see that the play is a pass. Like I want to see how those guys open up holes. Because I'll say this, I watched that North Texas UTEP game.
You did.
If there's a problem running the ball, it's going to be a problem for Oklahoma because UTEP could not stop the run against North Texas. So whoever it is...
Which I thought was
should have a banner day.
Interesting that Levy kind of went away from the 1A, 1B with Gray and Major, saying again, this is Eric Gray's room.
It's interesting.
Which is it's interesting to the point. All we've heard over the last month has been what a great camp Marcus Major had.
Yep. That's why sometimes I dismiss things like Jaden Davis. I'm like, oh, okay, he's just doing good for who he used to be. But what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
But at the same time, it's like these are new eyeballs. This is a new set of coaches. In a way, if they're saying that he's doing really well, he must be really, really excelling, out on the practice field. And, I think that's what makes Saturday so interesting, even though it's he's favored by 31. It would be extremely disappointing if it's a game in the third quarter. But, those first and second quarters, I think you're really going to get a good taste of what this thing could be.
And can Eric Gray run between the tackles? Sure. I think that's the other thing, too.
I'm giving the guy a free pass. I think everything was just so messed up last year as far as what he was being asked to do, the spots that they were putting him in. We'll see.
But, I mean,
he wasn't the guy that they got from Tennessee.
Yeah, but let's face it. There was a big difference when Kennedy Brooks was in the game and Eric Gray was in the game. I mean,
sure.
I would be willing to say, okay, free pass, but Kennedy Brooks had a fantastic year last year when they would run the ball.
Well, but you also have to acknowledge that Kennedy Brooks was a much better fit for what they were doing than Eric Gray was. Like that long stretch, the counter, all that stuff. Like Kennedy was born to do that. Like that was as good an offense for Kennedy Brooks' skill set as you could find.
Did he make a 53?
No,
he did not.
He got cut by the Eagles.
Wow.
Yesterday, but I never saw if the Eagles extended. I would think that he'd be like a practice squad guy, right?
You'd think there's a chance at least.
I never saw anything though on that.
How bad did that Lions quarterback get screwed?
Man, I felt bad for him. I felt so good after Hard Knocks last night, and then I woke up. That was the first thing I saw was Detroit Lions released David Blau. Well, hey, we don't have to worry about him anymore. I can tell you that.
Well, they got
Nate Sudfeld.
They got. Wouldn't he? But was he at Cleveland when Baker was there?
Sudfeld?
Yeah,
I don't know. He was coming over from San Francisco, I think.
Okay,
he's the odd man out after they re-signed Jimmy G.
Well, hey, Brock Purdy making their 53.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yes,
he's their third QB.
He's their third.
Who?
San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I was thinking Browns for some reason. Because I saw they just signed Kellen Mond this morning.
Yep.
Oh, God, he's so terrible.
I mean, I think that experiment was more than fitting up in Minnesota.
I mean, you could see that Kellen Mond wasn't a good quarterback at A&M.
No.
Like, what are you doing, NFL? Kellen Mond is the exact player that I'm just like, there are people evaluating talent in the NFL that have no business evaluating talent in the NFL.
They like his tools. They think they can fix it.
Everybody thinks that they can fix it. Everybody thinks they can be the guy. Or the team, or the school, or the
This
franchise.
is like the people, when I talk to people, and they're like, he's a freshman, man. He's 6 foot, but he's an offensive lineman. He's going to be really good. And I'm like, guys, he ain't growing 6 inches. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, he's never going to be a Power 5 guy if he's 6 foot as a freshman. Like, there's these unrealistic ideas. By the time you're in the NFL, sure, there are things you can adapt. You can get better. You're not going to be a different player. You are who, like, literally
Josh,
years of tape say you are.
I would have been an outstanding nose tackle if I wasn't just 5'9". I mean,
exactly. Like, I hear that crap all the time.
No, that's not crap. That's the truth.
Oh, I hear. Okay, I see what you. And you can be a really good high school player, but not have realistic Division I football hopes because you have physical limitations. Like,
no,
that's
I knew I needed to switch to baseball.
Yeah, so that there's always something like that, and it just.
But I'm telling you, with Kellen Mond, like, you could see he cannot throw the ball at the level of an NFL quarterback. Like, he was never going to be that guy. I don't care his intangibles or the other stuff that goes along with it. He's just not good enough.
Now, I will say, in his defense, if you get to a third-string quarterback, you're running pretty bare-bones offense to begin with. So having a guy that can scramble and move around, because likely is not, your first two didn't, trip over a turf monster to get hurt. Somebody killed them because your line can't block. So
maybe
that makes some sense.
Should we turn the announcement of the 53-man roster into like Bobby Bonilla Day every time Chase Daniel makes a 53-man roster?
Really He's the king. He's the king. God. He's my hero. He's my inspiration in life. Just collecting checks, baby.
The funny thing is,
him and Colt.
The funny Colt too. The funny thing is, I still don't think he's made as much money in his NFL career as Sam made in his first contract.
It's starting to get close.
Close, yeah. But he was at 46
Sam's
million.
Sam's collecting interest for years, so
Sam made $100 million as an NFL player.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Chase Daniels made half of that with half the talent.
Trying to see there it is, career earnings.
It was 46 going into this year.
Oh, it was 46?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever he's making now.
Yeah, it's like
And Sam's first contract was for $50 million, right? For 3 years.
Something like that.
Like, it might have been 70 with 50 guaranteed.
This says through 2022 he's at 42.
Okay. Hey, I'd take it.
Yeah.
I'd take the 4 or the 2. I'm not picky.
Yeah, either or. Just real quick, as far as like the depth chart stuff, I was a little surprised, and it's kind of been something that I've been surprised at throughout the entirety of camp, was just, you talked about all the transfer guys, and rightfully so. McCade's going to be in the starting lineup. Jeffrey Johnson's going to be in the starting lineup. Unfortunately, TD Roof isn't going to have the effect that I think a lot of people thought he was because of injury.
By the way, it is interesting, like, a guy that's barely been here, like, how much it seems like that's affected the other players that he got hurt.
Yeah,
like, just from a personal, not from a, making us better, but just like, you can tell, like, I mean, that guy's 100%. Been in a lot of colleges, but he's made an impression on his teammates.
I think
really
he's
quickly.
Just one of those guys that is like, you just want a part of the program. You want around everybody. And even though he's going to be hurt and out all year, we saw him the day, I think it was that Monday, he got hurt on Saturday, and he's out there in a sling helping coach the linebackers. And this is like 2-3 weeks ago at the beginning of camp. So I'm just surprised that like Trey Morrison, CJ Colton, Amani Walker to a certain extent, even though he's been nicked up, like I'm surprised that those guys haven't been bigger or given or earned, I guess I should say, bigger roles in the depth chart. And we'll see. I mean, somebody like a Trey Morrison, even Brent said yesterday, he started 44 games at North Carolina. You would think that he could step in and be able to contribute early.
But I would think if Billy Bowman reaches his potential, Bowman greater than Morrison.
Yeah. No, and I think that there's probably a little bit of that as well. Like maybe Billy Bowman's been that good.
It was interesting that Venables.
That's the way I read that.
It was interesting that Venables pointed out, like, basically the only time I've heard him really say anything about the previous staff was that basically saying that they screwed him up by trying to make him play a bunch of positions when he was a freshman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There was amazing he didn't get ruined.
There was some malpractice that I think Venables and staff have kind of insinuated as far as what the previous staff was doing. I mean, just him talking about Justin Harrington yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he said something about he hasn't missed a meal. It's like, okay.
That guy's not a corner.
Right. I get what you're saying. You don't have to say it. I think we get it.
Well, and people, and I, like, we've talked about this in the pod before, and people will be like, well, he asked to make that move. Cool. That doesn't mean, like, that doesn't change it. There are D linemen that tell me all the time, I'm going to talk to coach about playing some quarterback. No, you're not. That's never going to happen. Like, you have to be able to be like, that's cool, Justin. We understand that, but if you want to play, this is where you belong. Like, you can go to corner and waste away if that's what you want to do. But where you can help this team and you can get on the field is XYZ. Like, I don't get that, guys. I mean, and we talked about Stutzman earlier. Stutzman at will. Like, I mean, from everything I've gathered, like, just learn will, play will. Like, that's what we want you doing. Like, and he might slide over because Brent's always talked about going back to his first tenure that those positions are fairly similar. They're fairly interchangeable in a lot of things they do, but still. Like, we want you here. We want you to understand. And him and David working together, having some understanding. That stuff matters, especially in year one when you're just learning everything. It's all new.
You guys, I don't know, surprised at all? We got a lot of talk about R. Mason Thomas. I haven't heard a lot of people bring up Marcus Stripling here headed towards game number 1.
Little surprising he wasn't the starter, and then we'll see how he reacts to that. I think it's an interesting thing with Reggie and Ethan being the younger guys supplanting Stripling and Jonah as the older guys, and if there's any friction, you wouldn't think, but maybe that's part of it.
I also thought it was interesting that R. Mason Thomas at both positions is ahead of Clayton Smith.
Yep.
Yeah. That was...
But that becomes now
so good, and it just is like, come on.
That becomes now a thing where you have two staffs, and he hasn't made a jump. Like, I got to think it's on him. It's not like a reaching the kid or not being motivated. Like, something about the kid just isn't good enough for two coaching staffs now to look at him and say he should be getting more reps.
Yeah. But again, at the same time,
he's changing positions.
He's changing positions, and I think that, like, I get wrapped up in this idea a lot too. It's like you see this first depth chart, and I don't know. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that there's a lot that can change over the next 3 months. You can play yourself into that starting lineup very easily.
And so much of it's messaging. Does anybody actually believe if Eric Gray and Marcus Major out, Tyree Walker's the starting running back in game 2? No, I don't believe that for a second.
I do think he's going to get some carries. That guy's
he might.
Ball.
No, like that.
Like
that's
him.
Okay. I'm not saying he can't have a role.
I know,
but
what
I'm
you
saying
mean.
he's not going to be your bell cow. I don't believe that.
No, he could be a good goal line guy.
100%.
It will be interesting early to see, like,
monster.
and you asked about it yesterday, Bob, just as far as like what guys are going to redshirt, how are they going to go about the 4-game process. I would imagine over the first 2 games, you should see just about every
You'd
person
hope so,
that
man. It'd be bad
has
if you
an
didn't.
opportunity.
There was one other thing about Brent thinking that it's totally. I've lost it.
I have found the conversation is fun to have, but I do think it's been a little bit overblown as far as like Brent's demeanor on the sidelines. Like, I don't think that there's this idea that he's just going to be like running up and down the sidelines, losing his shit the entire game. And there will be instances of that. You're going to get a gif every once in a while of probably him losing his mind on somebody or an official or whatever. But I don't know. I think that there's like, he's taken on this like approach from being like the CEO or whatever. It seems like it's comfortable.
I don't think it's going to be as hard for him to control himself on the sideline as it is. It seems like when he's talking about giving up his role as defensive coordinator, like he's not calling play, like that's going to be the biggest
rough.
hard.
It might be a little bit
the hardest thing for him.
Easier said than done type thing.
Yeah,
because he's been doing this for 30 years in a certain way, and realizing that he's not the one that is calling in the signals, which Ted Roof will be doing. I think that's kind of known. He's not going to be responsible for that kind of stuff.
I remember my thought on his press conference. My favorite part of his press conference was basically Brent Venables like calling out everyone for asking cheetah questions nonstop.
Yeah, he's like, all right, hey, anybody for now or forever hold your peace type deal.
And we do that. It's like, and it's annoying. I get it. Like, how many questions do we need to ask about the cheetah?
The annoying part was we already
simply
asked about it last Thursday, and then there's people that show up Tuesday that didn't.
They're asking about it again.
We already went through this.
I mean, like, you've heard of the Roy back, right? It's just it's a different name for a Sam linebacker that's not a Sam linebacker. I mean,
I couldn't love more that he said, like, he was like Nick Harris, and you could like. I don't know. There was like this feeling, like even me listening to him, like people are going to get this now. Like this is not new. Like this is something they've done forever. You guys are familiar with this.
See, I mean, like, okay, so
there's not a specific height and weight that he's looking for.
Right.
It's a position that they just want to be able to do a little bit.
They want to be
everything.
versatile. I mean,
is that the best way to say it? Like, there's just not. Like when he talks about Nick Harris, and then he says Ryan Carter, the guy that was 5'7" and now on the staff as a graduate assistant. Or 5'9", not 5'7". That'd be interesting. That'd be Buki level. But it just, they want somebody that can go be a football player.
Well, look,
like it's a football player position.
It's easy to follow. Go back to 2000. Go to the national championship. Roy Williams was the safety, and instead Roger Steffen was the Sam linebacker that year. He was a walk-on. And what they found when they started playing pass-heavy teams like Florida State, they took Roy Williams and put him in the Sam linebacker spot. So everyone knows it as a 4-2-5 now, but back then it was pretty much, in 2000 it was pretty revolutionary. Nobody was doing stuff like that. So the cheetah is just a 4-2-5, and instead of a Sam linebacker, it's not a safety, or it's not just a linebacker. It is, it's not a corner, it's not a nickel, it's not a dime. I mean, it's a 4-2-5. And a guy lines up like a Sam linebacker, but he plays against the pass a lot better, or
legitimately a hybrid guy.
Yeah, it's just a hybrid guy, and they called it cheetah at Clemson. It was Roy back when he left OU. So you can't. Lincoln Riley would be surprised to know this, but you can't just take a player from another team and use that term when you go to a different team. He wasn't going to be able to call it the Roy Williams position at Clemson. Nobody would understand that.
What the hell's a Roy back?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the part of confusion was just because we didn't hear about it in the spring. It was still being listed as nickel. They weren't. It was like, did he have the personnel for the cheetah in 2022, or was he going to have to wait till 2023? And he had to wait till he got to camp. It's like Deshaun and Justin fit what this position
and
is.
Guess what? If this defense plays really well, all the aggregators are going to be doing all kind of clickbaity stories about, ooh, what is the cheetah?
Revolutionizing
how did it
college
come
football?
about to be? Yeah, it came from Oklahoma, you dickwad. And they named it something else, and now it's back.
Why is somebody else getting those clicks and we're not getting those clicks? That's upsetting to me. Bob, get on that story.
We're not going to make Bob do the clickbaity stuff. I don't want him to quit.
I put my foot down.
That's good for you, Bob. Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the things that just drives me crazy. He's like cheetah, 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 cheetah.
And he mentioned Trey Morrison and Justin Broyles as two guys that could play that too.
Mm-hmm. So, look, it's going to be fun. It's UTEP. I think what OU is like a 32-point favorite now.
Yeah.
Last I checked, that was a couple days ago. But
I mean, as much as I'm very excited to see offensively what they're going to be, what Dylan Gabriel. I think they're going to air it out a couple times. Like you're going to have a couple. You're not going to get the full tray of food, but you're going to get an appetizer. You're going to get a good feel of what this thing could be. But even maybe more so, I'm excited to see some of these guys that we've been hearing about that we legitimately haven't seen, whether it be a Davis Bevel or a General Booty. Who knows how many quarterbacks they try to run out there. Marcus Major, obviously. Daniel Parker. I want to see him try to kill somebody on Saturday.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Braden Willis. I mean, does he become a big part of this offense? I'd love to see Braden Willis come out of a game with 6 catches. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would say over-under, if you were going to say on Saturday, over-under for catches for Braden Willis. Or maybe we'll just go targets. I'd say over 4.
Yeah.
Just as a guess.
Well, it'd just be good to see Theo East out there again, too.
Yeah, and that was somebody that Marvin Mims talked about yesterday, just as far as, I think that we kind of forget how well things had ended for him, especially in, that Cotton Bowl against Florida, and the expectations that everybody had for Theo a year ago, and then the season truly never even got started because of the injury, the first week of camp.
I can't even imagine what it's like to break both of your feet.
You look back at it, was Theo the start of, we should have seen this whole season is just cursed. This just sucks. That was the first thing they'll look back on. You're like, you just can see dominoes falling, just everything. And again, and like Brent talked about, in a season that OU went 11-2, just how catastrophic it all was.
Was that post or pre-robbery?
Post.
That's post.
The robbery was
you're right. The robbery was you're right.
But I thought everything was headed in the right direction when there was a little armed
Theo
robbery.
Was already out Theo was out in the spring, though.
Was it spring football that he was hurt?
And then he got hurt again.
Oh, well,
yeah, then he broke the other foot.
I'm an idiot. I got you. I'm an idiot. Yeah.
No, I mean, when he had the second injury, it was just God, that 5-star class is cursed.
Yeah, he can't catch a break. Well, Jaden, it's up to you. And that never really came to fruition.
Or to not know you.
Wow, Josh is really sorry, Josh. You just banged around there. Wow,
in another dimension.
Yeah, you're definitely something's going on. He's coming back here in a minute.
Are we at all worried or concerned about the Jalen Redmond situation? Is that something that you should automatically be concerned about? Just as far as
what, concussion wise?
I would say all of the above.
Just healthy.
Yeah, just health something. In general.
Yeah, I mean, he's not been healthy. I mean, he's had and part of it was his own doing when he didn't work out, during COVID on his own to do his rehab. And that led to him taking the year off, basically. And Josh, I see that we have you back now. I'm sorry, you went through a little.
Yes. No, I don't know what happened there. It was. I was like, wait, I'm hearing something shaky, and then it went yellow on my screen. Yep, it's not connected. So don't have a good answer there.
Okay. No, but we were talking about Jalen Redmond and kind of concern for him.
You worried?
Mm-hmm. Me?
Yeah.
Something feels wrong. And I had heard he had a good summer. It wasn't a. They're struggling to get him going. It felt like he was buying in and finally, okay, this is my moment, this is my time. And it's hard to know if there's so much subtext in a depth chart. You hate to get too into the weeds about it, but
unless you're
for
Steve
him
Sarkisian,
to be there,
just don't put one out.
Yeah, I mean, which feels like your culture is really good if you don't want to put out a depth chart. You're afraid of pissing somebody off. That was an interesting juxtaposition of our culture is really good, but we're not going to put out a depth chart. Okay, sure, that sounds right. But with Jalen, to be and again, somebody's always saying you guys you're down on Jordan Kelly. It's not that. I think we know who Jordan Kelly is. He's a good, solid football player who can help OU win games. I don't have any problem with that. But if they were going to have a guy who is an interior pass rusher that could make a difference, it's Jalen Redmond. That's the guy that can do that for them. So for him to not just unanimously go out and take that job, that feels like a concern to me.
And maybe it's just a product of he just hasn't been out on the field enough to win that position.
Exactly.
Because if it's
which was something Brent did say. The depth chart is what you've earned to this point.
Right.
And sometimes, if you weren't out there, you didn't earn it.
The whole holding it up and talking about players earn their spot. Players earn their spot on this.
Maybe he just hasn't allotted himself that opportunity quite yet.
But I think if he's healthy and he's out there, I mean, he's going to be one of their bigger playmakers on the defensive line. There's no question about that.
Sure.
And that's fair, but and again, if it was a one-off, like he hadn't had lots of injury problems, you'd be like, okay, he was a little dinged up through fall practice. It feels like this is a pattern. Like there's always something holding him back. And I'm not blaming Jalen. Like I'm just saying it feels like
Rodney
at
Anderson,
some point,
Caleb Kelly. The body gives out. The body tells you.
The minute you're about to take off, you pulled up with a hamstring. And again, I'm not blaming him. I want to be really clear about that. It's just, it feels like at some point counting on him is a very risky proposition.
I think there's 3 other guys on the defensive line that just are really intriguing going into this year, and they're 3 guys that have played a lot of football for OU already, and it's Jordan Kelly, Isaiah Coe, Joshua Ellison. What are those 3 guys going to be able to give you? And if it's constant, consistent contribution, I think everything's okay up there. But if you start looking around and you get 2-3 games into this and it's not the production or not the contribution that you're wanting, that's when you start having to, I think, kind of worry about like where that pressure up in the middle is going to come from.
Yeah,
I think you know what you're getting from Jeffrey Johnson. I think you kind of sort of know what you're getting from Reggie Grimes and Ethan Downs.
I think the one thing that we will see different in this defense than what we've been seeing in years is that you're going to see the linebackers very involved at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems like
they just are
outside of Brian Asamoah, who can we remember that's just really good at the point of attack?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked to David Awegbu about that yesterday, just as far as like Brent is so just anal about the smallest misstep or the smallest like false step.
Yeah.
Like being like the footwork and being in the right spot at the right time. It seems like almost the defensive guys too, they've talked about watching film more in the last couple weeks than I ever remember those guys talking about last year.
Yeah.
And that's not like people asking them questions about it. It's them openly talking about, we got to be in the film room. We got to be doing what we need to do to give ourselves the best opportunity to succeed once we get in between the lines.
We get a lot of recruiting stuff to talk about. Josh has been out on the road a lot. First off, wanted to send a shout out to our sponsors, Dead Soxy, deadsoxy.com, DeadSoxy. We are, what do they call it? What do they call the preachers? Evangelists for the no-show socks. I saw a tweet by somebody the other day. It was just like, I can't believe I didn't have Dead Soxy in my sock drawer until now. Like, it's just amazing. I mean, just super light. We talk about, our T-shirts and stuff. Love the lighter fabric. The fabric on these is so light and just so comfortable. With the boardroom socks, they got the patented silicone beads that keep them up so you don't have, sock monkeys around your ankles when you're walking around. And the no-shows are just lifesavers. I mean, it's so hot out. It's been so hot out. Just not having that extra piece of sock, having your ankles free. Actually, I think it kind of makes it cooler. And just a great company. If you use that promo code SCOOP, you can get 25% off your order. But they've got lots of great sales going on as well with either the boardrooms or the no-show. And also the team colorways. Go check that out. They got the Crimson Pact. But our good friends at Dead Soxy, always being great sponsors of the podcast, so we appreciate them. Go support them. DeadSoxy.com. And as always, stay Soxy. Okay, so Josh, you've been a road monster lately. We have started getting out the content. We had a little server snafu, and we've got a lot of your video that is up now. But you saw some heavy hitters over this last week.
Yeah, it was we got 3 games in. Came into the week thinking it would be 2. Started off Thursday night going to see Caleb Hicks play against New Braunfels. Didn't come out, didn't Ryan's way. Hicks had a nice night, though. He's solid. He's a good, steady back. I said a few places, he kind of reminds me of a Trey Sermon. Great feet. I mean, just great feet. And not a pure home run hitter, but I like the way he moves. He reads things well. And as soon as he sees something, he's going to get upfield. He just doesn't have a lot of wasted motion. So again, it was my first chance to see him. I liked what I saw a lot. I think he's a really nice compliment to Dalen Smothers. Smothers is a little more electrifying, a little more flashy, and Hicks is just, kind of like we were talking about with Tyree Walker. You're going to have him inside the 10, and man, he's not going to lose you yardage. Like, you're going to go, he's going to get you 2, he's going to get you 3. He may pop for 15, but he's going to keep you moving forward and not put you in any bad spots. So, again, like Hicks a lot. I don't know. We could go game by game. If you guys got anything you want to ask, that's fine. Or I can take 5 minutes and go over everything I saw. I don't care how we do it.
I want the Anthony Evans story.
Let's start Anthony Evans because that was obviously the biggest story.
Yeah. Okay. So, we'll fast forward to Saturday. So, Anthony Evans go to the game. Obviously, it wasn't my initial plan, and the whole thing, I talked about it in the emergency pod, kind of started out chaotic because Friday we started hearing, okay, Anthony Evans is going to be, it's actually going to be Oklahoma, not Georgia. He talked about it. For those who haven't seen it, we've got it up on the site. He talked about coming into that day, and it was going to be Georgia, and essentially was calling Oklahoma to tell them that. And Jay Valai was just like, nah, like that's not the right move for you. And he said he just kind of chuckled to himself and let Jay give his pitch, and then felt differently. Just ended up picking Oklahoma. So I wasn't planning to go there. As I'm headed to DJ Lagway stuff, I'm making plans. I'm talking to the Alamo Dome people so that I can get a credential. They want to give credit. They were awesome. They helped me. It was really fast. I didn't have to kind of wait until the last minute. It all happened really quickly, so I really appreciate them. But so we get there, game goes off. For those that don't know, it went to overtime. It was this wild, really long game to begin with because Judson got up big. Johnson has a 20-25 quarterback we will be talking about. That's a dude. And then Judson ends up winning in overtime on a field goal. Johnson misses their kick. Judson hits theirs. They win. Well, it was part of a jamboree type deal, so there were 3 games. And as the Judson-Johnson game was ending, they were supposed to be starting the next game, which was Steele versus Brennan. So basically, there was no time to do interviews on the field like I would normally do. Like, they had to get out off the field of the Alamo Dome. Okay, fine. So they give the 5s to the fans, in the front row, and they start running off the field. Well, I see Anthony, and he kind of sees me, and I'm thinking, oh, he's got to go to the locker room. I'll just get him after the locker room. Well, we walk halfway around the Alamo Dome to get there. I could have done the interview while walking with him to the locker room, but I just thought, I'll just wait. So it's a whole thing. I sit outside his locker room for probably 45 minutes waiting for him to come out because I keep thinking they're going to go to the buses. Well, eventually it's clear that Judson's going to hang out, watch the last game themselves, and then they'll get on their buses and go home after the whole thing's over. Okay, fine. So I see their head coach, guy named Coach Soto, really good guy. I'm like, hey, Coach, could you get Anthony for me? He's just kind of hanging out in there. I don't know that he knows I'm here. And I'd sent him a couple messages. Like I thought he knew. So Soto goes in, comes back out like a minute later, and he's like, I can't. He's done a bunch of interviews. He just doesn't want to do anymore. And Anthony and I had talked the night before about doing the interview. And so at this point, I'm pissed. There's just no other way to say it. I'm mad.
You were mad. You thought
I
you'd been
messaged
screwed
you
over.
guys, and I'm like, son of a, and I'm walking out of the Alamo Dome, and I mean, you guys know me. I don't get mad about much, but I was pissed. And so I roll out, and I'm in my truck, and I'm literally like, I've started my truck. I'm about to leave. I'm in my, I'm headed home. And all of a sudden, my phone goes off, and it's Anthony. He's like, hey, man, hit me up. And he thought I didn't have his number, so he messages me his number. And I'm like, man, and I finally messaged him back. And it takes me a minute. I'm like, I'm not going to yell at this high school kid. I'm going to be chill. So I'm like, hey, man, Coach Soto told me you didn't want to do the interview. That's fine if you don't want to do it, but I want to go home if that's the case. I don't want to sit here. And he goes, no, man, you're my guy. Like, I'll meet you by the locker room, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of work out where we're going to go. So I proceed to then unpack all of the camera equipment I've put away, walk back into the Alamo Dome, and we do the interview right outside the locker room, right where I'd been standing. And we didn't end up doing the video because the lighting, I mean, it was like interior. It was just crap lighting. It would have been a bad deal. So didn't end up doing it. He does a nice job. I thought the interview, like Anthony didn't say a lot, but it was very telling what he did say. Like I said, when he talked about the Georgia situation and, Jay Valai's role and Jeff Lebby and just kind of how that all played out. So after it's over, he's like, okay, man, I got to go meet my parents. Cool, man, go on. Well, we walk out the same tunnel, and, Bob, I don't know if Bob's been there. I know Carrie and Eddie have. You walk out that south tunnel underneath the stadium, and it's where all the loading docks are and everything else.
Yeah.
And you're rolling out.
You played in the Alamo Bowl last year, Josh.
Bob got together.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah,
I will say
absolutely.
this. It was Bob's first trip ever, and he was amazed because the press box is just fantastic.
Awesome.
There.
So low.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
He's still amazed.
It wasn't even open. The press box was having some sort of private event, so it wasn't even open to media. Like, I just stayed on the field the whole time. You couldn't even go to the press box if you wanted to. It was just closed off. So kind of an interesting deal. But the reason I was thinking that is because I only know it from the Army game. That's my only times in the Alamo Dome. But anyway, so we're walking at the same thing, and I thought he was meeting his parents at that gate. Like, I thought they had a pass to be in the same media lot I was in or something. And all of a sudden, I hear him talk to one of the attendants, and he's like, oh, I got to go to gate 2. I didn't know exactly where gate 2 was, but I knew it wasn't anywhere near us. And Anthony's like, he had told me during the interview he'd kind of been fighting off like a hamstring, and he cramped up during the game with his calf pretty bad, and he's kind of hobbling around. I'm like, dude, come get in, let me give you a ride. I'll take you where you need to go. Come get in the car.
Violation. Oh my God.
Luckily I don't give anything to OU. So everybody out there, you're safe. So, but no, so I'm like, come take a ride. And so we go around, and we've got to go. This poor kid would have died. Like, it was a walk around. Like, it was almost to the exact opposite point of the stadium. But we get there, and there is it's $20 to park where they want to park, and I've got to get him past that to the gate. And I pull up, and I'm like, hey, man, I know everybody says this. I'm just dropping him off. Like, I'll be back in 10 seconds. Like, no big deal. And he's like, you'll have to drop him off here. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I look at him like, are you serious? This guy played in one of the games. Like, can we just drop him off at the gate? He's like, you'll have to drop him off here. That's all he would say to me. I'm like, good God. Okay. So Anthony, to his credit, he's like, hey, man, it's cool. Like, and he just jumps out and walks off. And then I've got and the guy's like, you can turn around right here. Like it was this huge ordeal. And I'm like, okay, man, I've got a media pass. I can go park in the other lot, but that's fine. And so I whip around. Me and the parking lot attendant had a little bit of an issue there. We were getting a little steamy with each other. And then, that sounded weird. That's not what that meant. But then I finally get on the road and, leave San Antonio. And after that, it was pretty much smooth sailing. But it was, I should have left at 6:30 if the game would have ended when it should have. I didn't leave San Antonio until almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it was really late when you were leaving. I felt bad. I was like, God, that sucks. But I guess it is good news for Oklahoma because as we talked about on the emergency pod, Josh, we literally recorded the podcast Thursday afternoon. Kind of wiped our hands clean of the situation, talking about going 1-1 on the weekend. Don't have to pay attention. And up until truly 1:30, and he made his announcement at 4:15. Up until 1:30, he was going to Georgia. He had told Nick Harris that he was going to Georgia. Articles were written about him going to Georgia. OU doesn't win these battles very often, if ever. You talked about this might be one of the bigger wins that Oklahoma's had in 20 years of doing this.
Josh, is it funny to think that if he isn't respectful and makes that call, then this never happens?
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
If he just I don't want to
I want to avoid even talking to OU.
Well, and I'll tell you, while I was sitting there pissed off, I remembered some conversations I've had where anybody you talk to is like, he's a great kid. And to that point, I had the exact same review of Anthony Evans. And that's why the whole thing, how it played out, I still don't fully understand. I'm just chalking it up to some poor communication, but everybody raves about him, and he's a military kid. He's moved around. That's why he's in San Antonio. His family moved around a lot when he was young. So I think there is a definite ingrained level of respect for him, especially in adults and people in positions of importance, that kind of he has that. And so I think that's why he did make that call and not just, they can find out with everybody else like a lot of kids do. But yeah, that, like I said, that I hadn't come at it that way at all, Bob, but that's That's really interesting. And I think it's also really interesting that the call he made was to Jay Valai.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's, and he said it in the interview. That's my guy. I love that guy. And, guys, we talked about it, and I've mentioned on the pod, people at Texas and Alabama kind of acted like they weren't sure about him as a recruiter when he came in. Now, there's a lot to do still, but he had a hand in Makari Vickers, and he sure is, was kind of the closer, if that's how you want to talk about it, for Anthony Evans. So he had a heck of a weekend.
Josh, let's backtrack and go to Friday. DJ Lagway, OU still in it for the 2024 quarterback?
Yeah, and it's one of those times, again, he was another guy I couldn't really do video with because I was interviewing him outside his locker room, and DJ, I've seen him twice. I've seen him in a practice, I've seen him in a game. We've done interviews after each time. He likes to clean up. Like, he wants to hit the locker room first, and then he'll talk to me. Like, he's fine with that. So I couldn't do, like, a midfield interview with him. I just kind of sat there and waited for him, and his dad was super awesome and helpful, and we kind of connected. To anyone going to a Willis game, his dad is also responsible for a lot of the cooking and pregame food and stuff for fans. Yeah, he's a guy to know. That's a guy to befriend. So I will probably find a way to sneak to Willis again because he was like, "Man, you could eat," and I'm like, "That would have been a lot better than what I had." So because it smelled.
What are we talking? Are we talking burgers or are we talking like barbecue?
Burgers, barbecue, like that. It was. I'm talking a pretty big spread that I walked past. So I didn't know it was him. I didn't know it was his. He was making fun of me after the game for not stopping by. But anyway, so and what I was going to say is I wish people could have seen in video his response as I asked the question where I was like, it kind of feels like UNOU have slipped apart a little bit. His face was very like, where does that come from? Like I could see it on him immediately that it was like, no, that's not the case. And then he was like, I talk to Coach Levy, all the time. We still talk a lot. And I think he has hopes of getting up there, although, being the quarterback and being the leader of that program, he understands, he's got to be there for everything. He's one of the team captains, I think the only junior team captain, if I remember correctly. He clearly takes that seriously. So I don't know how many places he's going to hit, but I don't get the impression at all that he feels like Oklahoma has moved in a different direction. I know there's a lot of talk with Michael Hawkins, and we can get into some of the stuff I talked about in Woke on Hawkins today, but there is there's no question for him that he still sees Oklahoma as a very viable option.
It's, just from the video that you shot, it's very obvious what a just physical talent he is. He is a massive, massive human being. We saw him up close just when he came to the OU campus, was talking to the coaches. Jeff Lebby's a big dude, and he was basically, almost standing eye to eye to him.
Well, you never had DJ and Van Buren stand next to each other, but that would have been like a Davis Bevel, Dylan Gabriel type of thing.
Sure.
100%. And Hawkins is the same way. He's a smaller guy too. But yeah, he is an enormous guy, runs extremely well. He put on a heck of a performance. I think he was 21 for 27 for like 340 yards. They pulled him mid-third quarter, and I think he had 7 touchdowns, 1 rushing and 6 throwing. They could have scored 100. They were just all over Rudder. I think it was 35-7 at the end of the first quarter. It was, and Rudder is not a great program or team, but they went to the playoffs last year. It's not just some, nothing awful. But this week we'll know a lot. They're playing Temple, who is one of the best in Texas. It's one of those teams that nobody ever talks about how good they are, but they are always making deep playoff runs. Temple's a really good program. My biggest association with them was state semis a few years ago when they knocked CeeDee Lamb out. Just a prodigious Richmond Foster offense, and Temple just shut them down. So it'll be real interesting to see what Lagway looks like against that group.
That was a hell of a game. I remember you talking about how good that game was. Did CD had a really big game, didn't he, down there?
Well, it's so relative. Like, compared to what I had seen CD do that year, no, it was nothing. But he had a couple of catches that were just like he made a catch in that game. I think we still use
those gifs every once in a while.
He made a catch in that game that was just like the one he made on the sideline that was out of bounds.
Yep.
But he made it in play on like a 3rd and 17, and it kept the chains moving. Like
yep.
It was just, he just went up, pulled it down one-handed, and got tattooed for it, and still kept the ball. And that was one of the moments where I was like, this guy's not just like a talented receiver. He's a football player. That's a dude right there. And that was, I think it was not long after that game when I was like, we've got to move him as high as we can possibly move him, because he is going to be an absolute star.
Last but not least, Thursday night, you went and saw OU running back commit Caleb Hicks. Obviously didn't turn out for Denton Ryan how they wanted, but I thought that you kind of walked away thinking that, I don't know. I don't want to say what you thought before, but I kind of took it away that you're pretty impressed with Caleb Hicks.
I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I mean, like there's no question. I mean, he is an impressive guy, really, really well put together, big kind of lower body guy. Guys, we know how it is. There's those running backs that kind of look like wide receivers, and then there's running backs you're like, that's a running back. That's what I mean. Like he is big, powerfully built, one of those guys that's going to break the first tackle almost every time. Like I said, moves really well. Doesn't dance. I mean, and people sometimes they hear great feet and they're like, oh, he dances a lot. No, I'm not saying that. He is perfectly fine getting north and south, but he can make you miss in space. Like he has that ability in his game. I didn't get a chance to see him as a receiver, which I think anybody that read the Under the Hood I did about Jeff Lebby, they're going to know that's a big part of this. I mean, the running backs are going to catch a lot of swing passes. They're going to, just be asked to do those kind of things. I think that's definitely something he'll handle fine. I've seen it on his tape. He didn't get a chance to show it. The quarterback wasn't his greatest night. That's not a game the quarterback's ever going to look back on and think, I really want to show this to recruiters someday. It was just a tough night. Denton Ryan was out early. I think they kind of put it in through cruise control late in the third quarter, and it just came back to bite them. New Braunfels just played a heck of a game. I mean, they really did. But Ryan, turnovers, poor penalty. I mean, they had they had a couple of touchdowns called back on penalties. They just made a lot of mistakes, and they get no rest. They're going to go to Shreveport this week and play Bryan, Arkansas in that jamboree at the Independence Bowl. So I think Thursday night McAllister's there. Thursday or Friday, I can't remember which. So I mean, it'd be a good weekend if you wanted to go see some OU commitments and you happen to live in the Shreveport area. You could see a couple on Friday and Saturday with Eric McCarty and Caleb Hicks.
Buddy Bunky Perkins might be doing radio call for that or something. Who knows? It is funny that you talk about like running backs coming out of the backfield and catching passes and Jeff Lebby's offense. That's one thing that I think we've been able to kind of portray just in the sights and sounds stuff. That is like one of the individual drills that Oklahoma every day at practice, every day that we've been out there, quarterbacks throwing balls to running backs in the flats. And I'm sure that happens everywhere, but you can tell that is something that they really work on with timing and things like that.
Oh, when you look at it, like I said, when I was watching on tape, what shocked me is how willing Lebby is to do that on like a 3rd and 7. Yeah. Like they don't care. They'll flood you out,
yep,
and then they'll just dump it to the running back right behind them. Like they'll do it over and over, and they had a good success rate with it. So
they did that to Tennessee to death over in Knoxville last year.
That was a huge one. And not to get too far. I mean, I don't know if we have any more recruiting stuff we want to talk about, but just that's the interesting thing for me is because such a huge part of the two games I saw, Arkansas and Tennessee, that I obviously I saw more, but the two I broke down for Under the Hood was just what that meant, like how they're going to adapt the run game, because Matt Corral was a huge part of the run game in those two games. Obviously Dylan Gabriel's not going to run like that. How do they kind of find a way to make that, how do they even those numbers? Because I would say in those two games, Matt Corral might have combined for 30 carries. He had a lot of runs in those two games, and I'm not talking all of them were scrambles. I would say 70% were called run.
Josh, I did want to hit on, you got two directions to go here. One, where you're going this weekend. But then two, what the heck can we expect from visit weekends this season when you have 22 commits and you sort of know like when the 4 or 5 you really want to bring in? Is this just going to be a constant 2024, 2025 guys coming in, and that's really going to be the story of the fall when it comes to recruiting with on campus game weekends?
I think that's a lot of what you're going to see. I mean, I think you've got obviously the big visit weekends of, you're going
to have Bedlam, Baylor. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to have your big ones.
Those are going to be your moments. That's when stuff's really going to happen. And, I guess speaking of Bedlam, Sam Spiegelman of On3 was reporting that David Hicks has set his official visit for Bedlam weekend at Oklahoma. So that feels particularly large. There's been talk of an Alabama official, which would mean Texas A&M would not get one. Now, people are going to read too much into that. He lives in Katy. He can get to College Station in an hour and some change. And Katy ISD has been very good to A&M through the years. So he could go up there any weekend he wanted to and just hang out and basically do an official visit. He's just paying for his meals. So you can make all that work. But I think it's really indicative and a good sign that Oklahoma's getting what figures to be his last official visit. I think that's a good sign. That tells you a lot. I still feel very good about that situation. There's a long way to go. Much can change. But as things stand, I would still bet on Oklahoma at the moment. But, yeah, to your question, Bob, yeah, you're going to have several guys in for Baylor weekend. You're going to have several guys in for Oklahoma State. But other than that, it's just going to be a smattering of unofficial visits. I don't think you're going to see even 30-man visit weekends. Because that's not – Brent wants the focus to be football when it's football and recruiting when it's recruiting. That's not to say guys aren't going to be recruiting or anything like that. But they don't want to have Todd Bates trying to entertain 12 defensive linemen while he's trying to get ready for, Kansas State, whatever it may be. So I think they're going to balance that out pretty well. And it's not to say that some guys can't come in every weekend. Like Ryan Grayson, I know he's coming in this weekend from Beggs. I'm willing to guess Ryan Grayson's going to be there for multiple weekends. That's probably going to happen. Obviously, guys like Eric McCarty, the commitments, guys that can make the trip up, they'll be here plenty. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of the big splashy weekends, especially not in the senior class. You're going to see some good 2024, some good 2025s, and that's going to make up the vast majority of all the unofficials that are coming in.
It's pretty amazing when you go back to Brent's first signing day press conference and all the panic that was out there about, we're not going to offer kids, before we've seen them play, at varsity level and stuff like that. And this just hasn't been an issue. Offering people, getting early commitments,
It will be telling, can he get any 2024s during the course of this year, since that's what's...
if they have a big spring day. I mean, I would imagine they'll stick with, the spring game will be able to be bigger than, you'll have Kyler Murray coming back. If he has a great season, then you can make that a really big recruiting weekend. But I would imagine they'll kind of stick to the barbecue because that's worked out really well for them.
That would be my guess. There'll be some variations on what they've done, but I think you're going to see it. And part of it is because it's not just something Brent created. This is what they did at Clemson, where they had a big early summer kind of thing, and then they had the end of the summer, like the party at the Palace, where we're seeing, more and more good news keep rolling out of that with guys like Colton Vosick and now Jacoby Johnson. And some more that are quite possible to come. So there is, I think that's what you're going to see. I'll be interested to see in the spring game if they deviate a little bit, and some guys that maybe, they're really ready to decide, we'll bring in 5 or 6 officials for the spring game. I don't think it's ever going to be like what it was, because that's not what they want. They don't want guys rushing to a decision in April and then having to kind of white knuckle it all the way to December. They'd rather take your other visits, be sure, and then, we're going to be here and be ready.
And then where are you going this weekend, Josh?
Well, Bob, that is a very poignant question at the moment. The initial plan was for me to go and see Caden Green this weekend. Caden Green is not playing. A really funny coincidence. Caden Green is playing a team I have, strangely enough, seen before and don't remember them being all that quality. I'm like, I don't know that I want to pay the bill to fly up just for one game in the Kansas City area and then fly back and see him play half a game. That's not really what I want to do. So I think I'm going to punt until a little later in the year, watch him in a different game. I'm looking at some like Marshall and Longview, where I would see Taylor Tatum, the 2024 running back offer, Willie Nelson, the cornerback offer. Marshall has always got some guys. Obviously, Longview also has Jalen Hale. I can just go and, be wowed by his unbelievable talent. That's kind of the one I'm looking at. South Oak Cliff and Lancaster is also a possibility. I know some will ask about Geyer and Alito, and that's definitely a possibility. I just think there might be a few better options a little later in the year, and I know everybody's like, gotta go see Jackson Arnold. I will. The thing to remember is I'd really like to talk to Jackson Arnold and Peyton Bowen after the game, and I just have a policy. I don't do that if guys lose because it's never a good interview.
Never is.
And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to talk to me either. I 100% get it. No problem. Alito, don't get me wrong, I would probably pick Geyer to win that game, but if I drive all the way up there and I can only talk to Devon Keys, who I'd love to talk to, but that's going to be a little bit disappointing. So I'm looking at – I also considered Samuel Omasigo, seeing him this weekend. I think he got a little dinged up in week 1, so I'm probably going to wait a few weeks on him. The perfect one to see is Westlake at Judson, but I just freaking saw Judson, and so it's I don't know if that's going to be a very good use of my time. So we'll see. I'm still playing all that a little bit by ear.
I think there's also an outside opportunity. I get down to Lancaster next week to see Jackson Arnold and Geyer.
Thursday night.
Kind of works out perfectly for our schedule with Kent State, so we might be thinking about doing that next week.
I love all that. That works. So there's just like this weekend. There's almost nothing on Thursday night. The only game I have marked at all is Heritage Hall at Millwood. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to drive all the way up there for Heritage Hall at Millwood. And next week, there's like 12 great games all over the place on Thursday night. So it just it's the way it works out sometimes. But, this week, like I said, going to catch a game Friday night. And then the next week is my trip up to the Pacific Northwest. Going to see Heath Ozida and Josiah Wagner go head-to-head. And then that Friday night, going to get to live one of my real dreams, the 2023 class. Finally get to see PJ Atabare in person, and he'll be going against Shandavian Bradley. So that will be a fun game, probably not so much for the quarterbacks, but very much for me as a guy that gets to watch them go to work.
All right. Should be really good. Just two, kind of outside-the-box things.
Sure.
One, any reaction to the news this morning that the Big 12 is going into negotiations early? Dennis Stodds reported that OU and Texas leaving early is obviously on the table because of that. I mean, I think that this is headed down in a direction where OU and Texas are going to be out before 2025. It's kind of interesting to see, okay, so if you break, and this is something that we've talked about before, you break that contract or you get a new contract, what happens with the buyout and the $80 million that OU and Texas are due to the Big 12? That's kind of interesting to me. But I do think at the end of the day, we can kind of see the writing on the wall, can't we, as far as how this is headed or where this is headed in OU Texas be out before 2025?
There's a couple of things here for me. One, what is Fox's interest in the Big 12 moving forward? Because if it's all ESPN trying to fill that inventory they just lost with the Big Ten, then it bodes well for OU and Texas getting out early. Because if ESPN's in total control of a Big 12 contract, they can kind of set the terms like, hey, we'll give you this deal if you let OU and Texas go into the SEC, and if not, we can only give you this deal. So, I mean, ESPN can broker the thing. The other thing to me is, just judging by the stuff that's going around OU right now, we saw the tent city being built, the premium tent city the other day. OU seemingly, the deal that they made with the One Oklahoma deal, at least Learfield, Sooner Sports Properties, it just seems to me like OU is kind of doing everything they can to build a war chest. Like they're getting ready for a buyout. Like suing Sooner Scoop, all that kind of stuff. Like
we're selling T-shirts so OU can pay this exit fee.
Well, I mean, if you just play nice, we might give you some money for the T-shirt. We might make some license stuff.
Do your part, people.
No, but I mean, they're tightening their belts financially. Sure. It seems. I mean, the ESPN, like it's been these little things like OU not wanting to send out press conference video footage, like to media outlets. Like it just seems like everything's getting tightened around the department right now. To me, that signals they're saving up for something. And I know I saw Gabe Eichert's tweet earlier, and we talked about this.
We talked about this on Friday. But we have a number on it now.
Now Gabe has put out there, he's advancing it, saying, where the bud has been torn down. That we'd been told Thad Turnipseed and Brent wanted to build some type of a football facility, and we talked about possibly the track and field being involved. But now Gabe has put a number to it, $175 million.
Right.
Imagine someone came to his family and said, "Hey,
can we have $175
million? You got $175 million laying around? You gonna open some truck stops soon?" He's put that number out there, and it is interesting. I don't understand the whole Bud Wilkinson or the whole Barry Switzer Center thing, like how it becomes basically a mausoleum or some sorts or something.
Could it end up being a situation that space just isn't simply big enough for what that has in mind?
Right. Yeah. I mean, recovery.
He talked to you about this stuff when you did your interview, didn't he? As far as like kind of the sites for the future. I know that didn't he have like some projections that he didn't want you to take pictures of and stuff?
Yes. Well, yeah, he had all his plans.
Right.
Like, you take a picture of this.
You can look, but do not take a picture.
Yeah. It just seems like, I mean, this is very much a Thad Turnipseed.
I don't want you to be like Cynthia Froyline or whatever and get in trouble. But
who is that?
The baker lady that said that he said.
Oh, that was so stupid, that whole entire thing.
That he never said. I guess she said it, and then he was like, yeah, uh-huh. And she was like, Baker just said.
I just can't imagine coming from the school.
Is that really what happened?
Yeah, yes. I can't imagine coming from the school of thought, though, that like you're like,
she
Baker
admitted
said
that on
what?
a podcast. Basically. She backtracked on the same podcast she said it on. She's like, well, Baker didn't really say it. I said it, and then he just agreed with me.
Yeah.
Weird.
So stupid. At the end of the day, though, OU wants to build a new football facility.
Yeah, I mean,
Thad Turnipseed's going to build a new.
And that was months looking what makes the most sense in terms of square footage.
That would house your locker room, your dining hall, everything, your rehab, your recovery, like all the stuff.
So they would move the locker. The locker room would technically be across the street.
I would think so.
Interesting. I wonder what they would do with like all that. Would they just repurpose everything?
Gabe was saying that it would be like a multi-purpose, all athletic facility.
In where the Switzer Center is now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, it makes sense.
It's what, if they've just 6 years old or 5?
If they've
it's like, man, already feels old.
If they've just hired or they're looking to hire an architectural firm, like that's going to be the thing to see the master plan when they release it to the donors and say, hey, this is what we're building. This is what we need to raise.
Sure.
I know that I've already seen the fans on Gabe's things. Like, what about the press box? Thad doesn't care about the press box, and I don't think Brent does either.
Yeah,
that doesn't help them be a better football team.
I think the one thing, and everybody has said this since like those guys came in. There's a vision, they have a plan, and I don't know. I guess in a way, it's kind of cool to see that all come to fruition. They're moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
and it's like we said last week. It's like in a weird kind of strange way. All the hard stuff that you think about when you're taking over a program and rebuilding or trying to build the foundation of what Brent Venables wants to have at Oklahoma, all that's kind of in place. Like the easy part of what you hired him for and actually going to win football games and coaching, that's yet to come. Like the hard part of putting a foundation in place, whether it be the soul program or, the culture or whatever you want to talk about that they had to kind of overtake. It seems like that's been flawless. Like that part is kind of the hard part that you don't know how players are going to react. Are they going to buy in? Now the easy part is actually doing what you hired them to do, and that's go win football games.
Yeah, but the winning is not the easy part. That's the hard part. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, that's
like you can plan all this stuff all you want. You have 3 crappy seasons. You're not going to be around to move into a new facility or even break ground on one.
100%.
But I mean, you got a plan.
And I remember
Go ahead, Josh.
The first recruit I talked to was Caden Helms, the first guy when Brent was going around and starting to try to solidify everything way back in December. And I remember him telling me, he was like, yeah, they're going to bring in like these professional cooks, and they've got this guy who's going to like change all the facilities and like rebuild it. I didn't know who he was talking about then, but like you guys earlier talking about, this has been their plan. This is all foreseen. Like, I mean, this was stuff Brent was telling recruits 8 months ago. Like, I'm continually impressed by the stuff that they were saying then to recruits. Like, I mean, they could have been general. They could have been very like, oh, it's all going to be great because of, and could have been a little more, I don't know, half-hearted in the way they presented it. But like, they were saying things that he was talking about Thad Turnipseed. We didn't know it then, but I know it now. And he was talking about, this guy's going to help us rebuild all our infrastructure, all the stuff. We're going to have state-of-the-art and you saw the pods come in and all that stuff. I'm like, this is what he was talking about. Like, he foresaw all of this. He'd been in Norman for 10 minutes, and he knew that this was what he was doing. So, again, like, I guess I'm stating the obvious. It's just impressive to me how much this has all been in the works and how much they still know they're going to do going forward that we haven't even begun to see.
And I think it also, like, it goes without mentioning that a lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible if I think that they, in a way, had they not already seen the commitment from the fan base and from the alumni financially over the last 9 months. Maybe it's a little bit harder to present this stuff now without having won any football games, if that makes sense. I think that they, like, everybody kind of knows. It's kind of been the thing that, like, anywhere I go now, it's like every person I run into is genuinely excited about everything that is involved with the football program right now, from top to bottom, whether it be Brent, whether it be the players, the fans. I mean, I've talked to parents of players that have straight up said, like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to their son. They're in a better place now than they were 9 months ago. And I think that that's telling, considering they haven't played a game yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still of that. I'm not trying to crap on anything, but I'm still of that mindset about, let's see what happens when things don't go well.
100%.
Like, let's see.
I mean, you
when
have
a kid
to look at it
play,
that way.
100%. Is he still as bought in as he was because he's not getting playing time? I mean,
100%.
And you got to deal with that. I mean, that's
Doom pod time.
No, but I think at the same time, though, it's like it's interesting to hear them talk about, Brent talk about a Justin Harrington's parents that have reached out to him every week since. And I know, Bob, you're going to be writing about this as far as like just thanking him to let their son back into the program. Like somebody like a Justin Harrington, and you can watch the 11-minute interview that Bob got yesterday at practice. Like that is, I watched that interview and it almost makes me a little angry. It's like, I just don't understand. I need somebody to explain to me what was going on with his situation a year ago and how you wouldn't want this kid just at the very minimum a part of your program. And for him to enter the transfer portal halfway through the year, it's like, what truly was going on? Why was it happening? And I don't know. It's just refreshing right now. Again, check back in a couple months when I've said very bad things about people that are all very good people.
This might be the most just calm pod that you've ever done.
Well, I mean, I haven't. I have no reason to be angry. I'm just happy to be alive.
I hope you get everything worked out with the doctor.
When I was on the practice field and I got to the gates and they told me that my
pearly gates?
Yeah, the pearly gates. I was dying. And I saw I got to Peter and I actually will not be admitted. And I had to go back and be a better person.
It's because you were wearing a badge.
Eddie's literally
that said
the only
media,
person
not
surprised.
with your name on
Medea.
Medea almost died that day.
Yeah.
All right. I want to remind you guys there will be the Eskridge Lexus post-game podcast returns this year. So Eddie
from
and
the
I
office. It's going to be
we'll
fun
be
over
back
here.
At it from the office if we can get over here on game day. They'll allow us to be in our offices. Yeah. I'll pay for your parking if you have to pay $20 to park. I don't know how that's going to work out.
Saturday is going to be an interesting feel out day. Just
all
to
the
see,
way around.
Yeah, like what everything
Lots
is.
of new things.
Yeah, a lot of new things.
So, but Eddie and I'll be back for the post game. Bob will be there with all your coverage at Soonerscoop.com. So check that out. And Josh will be around checking things out as well. We'll have to see if we end up flying him out. Josh and I did a lot of testing on the YouTube stuff yesterday, so we're good to go.
Very cool.
And so soon we should start pumping out some recruiting content with Josh on the YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. Sights and sounds. I mean, can't wait to see that first one after the game. Hopefully properly white balance, which I think we've got that all taken care of now. So thank goodness. Bob, I'm sure his technology will work. I can't promise you anything on mine, as we all know. So thanks, everybody, for listening. It's game week. The Brent Venables era begins. Everything else to follow. It's all new. We're really looking forward to it. Very excited. Hope you guys are as well. Soonerscoopstore.com. Thank you to all those who have purchased. We should be restocked here very soon on everything, and the flags and all that will be up. I know people are asking, and I'm sorry. I just haven't. It's been a busy week. Haven't got around to it, but it's in the other room ready to be photographed. So Soonerscoopstore.com. We appreciate your support there. Can't wait to see some of those Make Lindsay Street Great Again t-shirts on game day on Saturday. I know some people have told us they are definitely wearing them, so looking forward to that. If I see you, I'm going to come and ask to take a picture with you. I'll tell you that as I'm headed to the stadium. So thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.